So whenever you're ready, if you could just say who you are.
Okay. I'm Heidi Strauss. I'm the artistic director of Adelheid. I'm a dancer and choreographer and mom. Lot X was a performance work that was made over 2 years with support from Canada Council's new chapter program, which was a chance to work on something on a kind of larger scale than we'd ever been able to do before. And it was a collaboration that was supported by Harbourfront Centre and Danceworks, um, and used the Harbourfront Centre space, so both the outside and the inside of the theatre, as a way to have the audience travel through the work with the dancers, to examine the history of the space where the work actually took place, and to look at human impact on that environment particularly. So the audience started on site and were traveled down into a parking lot and experienced watching the dancers, then moved in pods up into the theater, you know, kind of not knowing pre-pandemic that that's how we'd be moving in smaller groups into theaters. They watched then the work from two different levels above the dance. So they were really separated from and kind of voyeurs looking in on a world that was below that like could shift. And we worked with the projection to be able to like play with that shift and like resituating and changing the environment based on the floor rather than the background, which is often the case in sort of proscenium based video work for performance. And then at the end of the work, the audience came down onto the main floor and were present with the dancers in a real space together, kind of on the same plane.
I remember coming to the show and the whole setting up, checking in, like that was all kind of fascinating as well. And I think it got people very excited about what was about to come because it was such an unusual setup. So I wonder if you could describe a little bit more about the audience interface with the Cohort app.
There was an option to download the app before coming to the show, but many of the people didn't do that. And so there was a sort of meeting zone inside one of the buildings at Harbourfront that we used as a kind of like, I guess it ended up being a bit of like a community gathering in a way, because it was a place for people to wait for the experience to begin. And it was also like a place for people to download the app and make sure that it was working. One of the things that I find curious about installation-based work, but also performance work where the audience has the capacity to decide where they're going to sit as things shift, or where they're going to stand, or what their perspective is like they choose your perspective. And we do that in so many other parts of our lives, but when we go into a theater, we usually sit like close to the people beside us and actually touching, which I learned during the pandemic, that your elbows are touching so that you can feel and connect to the energy of the people beside you. But I think that that's like, that can exist in different ways when you have choice. And I think, you know, we give performers choice in work that has like more open structures, and they feed off of it because they're allowed to be more themselves inside of it in a sense, and for the decisions that they're making to have meaning and find meaning in. And what's to say that my perspective and how I think you should see something is actually the right way for you? It's probably different, and you'll probably gravitate to the place that you'll find the best experience for yourself, or at least the most comfortable experience at first, and then can move into places where your comfort levels can expand. And I think that comfort level expanding with the use of digital devices too is one of the things that I think is important to acknowledge in this period of time, where the overlap and the distinction between forms is becoming like a much more fluid conversation. And certainly since, you know, March, like we're interfacing and connecting in this medium like more than in any other way. And I think that that's going to just like, that's something we're just going to become more and more used to. Performance work is really important, whether you're sitting in a like in an audience in a black box theater or whether you're walking through the wilderness. You Are Swimming Here is an augmented reality installation that is on the Harborfront site again, but sort of on the other side of the building than the actual show was, or the experience was for Lot X itself. But it uses a lot of the ideas or pieces or images or figures from the Lot X performance experience and displaces it from ever being inside of anything except a virtual world. The kind of augmented reality that we used was geolocative AR and also target-based AR. But in this puzzle piece of like allowing people an in, so not just the people who know about the project and have the app can go to see it. We wanted to have something that gave people who were curious a potential way in if they were just like walking along and happened upon the project. And so we were also using a web-based AR off of a QR code. The structural significance, I guess, of the process of working with digital technologies in a way that's like, oh, there's this idea, but you have to see that idea like enlivened or functional before you can go that, oh, but if you can do that, then can you do this? And then it becomes like the stairmaster, and you can like, and I think that in a way we never have enough time because there's a deadline for what we're working on and we're only like just discovering where we can go. This kind of work is also really expensive, and expensive in a way that is not like expenses that we're used to in building performance projects where you work in a space and you have like the people you're working with and those costs are kind of fixed, where like the amount of work for these kinds of like technologies to be, and the amount of time and testing and troubleshooting to get like just something not basic but something to work in a way that is like semi-reliable or pretty reliable on different devices. I think that's one of the reasons why Cohort is a really important project, is that if these kinds of like first templates can exist for other artists to like already be on the third step of that stairmaster, then they don't have to pay for all of that previous time and they can start to see like where their ideas can go more quickly.